All right, hey everyone, Phil Batterson back with another video. So today what I'm thinking about is why almost every athlete should consume carbohydrate during a race performance. Something that has been thrown around a lot is this idea that you can become a fat adapted athlete and unleash or unharness the power of fat to fuel your exercise. And there's been some really interesting studies where they take people through really low carbohydrates for really extended periods of time. And indeed, these people have amazing fatty acid oxidation potential. However, I would argue, while it's good to maximize your fatty acid oxidation potential, you're losing out on performance by limiting the amount of carbohydrates you're consuming during exercise. And let me explain. So in bioenergetics, and a lot of really smart people who have determined that the rate of ATP production coming from fat is pretty low, almost half that compared to carbohydrates. Once carbohydrates make it into the mitochondria. But before carbohydrates make it into the mitochondria, when they're stored as glycogen or glucose in the process of glycolysis, there's actually an even larger discrepancy between the amount of ATP that's being produced and the amount of byproduct that's actually getting into the mitochondria. So from a bioenergetic standpoint, if you aren't giving your body opportunities to oxidize carbohydrates, you're essentially missing out on the ability to do higher and higher intensity exercise. And the whole goal or the whole outcome of performance is to do something as fast as possible. If you're doing something fast, you need a lot of ATP very fast. So essentially, by limiting your glucose intake, especially during a race, you're going to be limiting your potential for performance. So a good example that comes up to me is I was watching Zach Bitter, who is arguably one of the best American ultra runners of all time, has a lot of records, has done some crazy stuff, and he got fairly famous for being a fat adapted athlete. He went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he was talking to Joe Rogan about this. And one of the things he would say is that yes, primarily, like a lot of his eating was focused on, eating a lot of meat. I believe it was a lot of meat, but essentially, kind of going a little bit more keto, low carbohydrate compared with normal diet. So what people kind of fail to take away from that, though, is that he also mentions this idea of fueling with carbohydrates and refueling with carbohydrates after his hard workouts. So whenever you do something that's high intensity, even if it's only zone 2 training, which is supposed to be targeting quote unquote fat max, you're still burning carbohydrates. We can determine that by measuring somebody's respiratory exchange ratio. And then based on the chemistry behind oxidizing carbohydrates and oxidizing fats, we can essentially determine what proportion of oxygen produced or oxygen consumed and CO2 produced is coming from carbohydrates versus fat. So even at fat max, when you're burning the maximal amount of fatty acids, you're still burning carbohydrates to the extent that it's almost 40% of the energy derived is coming from carbohydrate oxidation, which is pretty crazy, thinking that even at fat max, we're still burning a lot of carbohydrates. For example, if you're going out, you're doing 2, 3, 4 hour exercises, and you're burning 40% carbohydrates the entire time. Maybe you're like me and you're going a little easier, but you're still probably burning 20, 30, maybe even 40% carbohydrates, you have to recognize that you need to refuel and replenish those over the course of the next couple of days. And really the only way to do that, well, you could get some level of gluconeogenesis from your liver. It's fairly low and kind of an expensive energetic process. Or you could just refuel with some carbohydrates immediately following your workout. And what's cool about that is that right after a workout, your body is actually primed to put glucose into your muscle, and through a bunch of molecular pathways and energy, you get this really cool effect of preferentially storing glucose in your muscles after a workout. That was a long-winded way of saying that I believe that everybody who is exercising to some extent, especially training, I think the key word there is training for something, needs to be consuming adequate carbohydrates in order to maintain muscle glycogen levels and give themselves the potential for the best performance possible. All right, so that was a little bit of a rant, but if you guys are enjoying these, want any clarifications, leave a comment down below, and hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying it as well. All right, we'll see you in the next one.